Story 1. The Vanishing Hitchhiker. It was past midnight when Ethan finished his late shift at a small diner just off the interstate. He had worked there long enough to know the quiet, eerie mood of those long night drives back home. The road stretched endlessly in front of him, dark pine trees pressing against both sides like silent spectators. His headlights cut through the blackness, and the faint hum of his old Ford pickup was the only sound breaking the silence. The night felt heavy. Fog hung low, rolling across the asphalt like it had a mind of its own. Ethan leaned forward, eyes squinting, when suddenly he spotted movement on the side of the road. At first, he thought it was an animal. But as he slowed down, his stomach tightened. It wasn't an animal. It was a girl. She couldn't have been older than 20. She stood barefoot on the shoulder, pale in the headlights, wearing nothing but a thin white dress that clung to her in the damp air. Her dark hair hung wet against her face, and when she looked up at him, her eyes were wide, almost pleading. Ethan hesitated. Every horror story he'd ever heard came flooding back, but something in him couldn't leave her there alone. He rolled down the passenger window just slightly. "You need a ride?" he called. She didn't answer, just nodded slowly. Ethan's gut screamed at him not to do it, but his hand was already reaching to unlock the door. The girl climbed in without a word. Her skin was so cold that Ethan swore he could feel the temperature in the truck drop. For miles, silence sat between them. She stared straight ahead, never once meeting his eyes. Finally, Ethan tried to break it. "So, where you headed?" Her lips moved, but her voice was almost a whisper. "Home." "Where's home?" he asked. She lifted one shaky hand and pointed further down the highway. "Near the old Willow Creek exit." Ethan frowned. Willow Creek had been abandoned years ago. He'd heard rumors about floods and landslides making it unlivable, but no one lived there anymore. "You sure?" he asked. That was when she finally turned to him. Her face, in the dim glow of the dashboard, was pale as paper. Her eyes were wrong. Not empty exactly, but heavy, like they carried a weight too old for someone her age. "Yes," she whispered. "Take me home." Something about the way she said it made his chest tighten. Still, he drove on. A cold sweat began to form on the back of his neck. Minutes passed. Ethan kept glancing at her, then back at the road. And then, without warning, she was gone. The seat beside him was empty. Ethan slammed on the brakes, the truck screeching to a halt in the middle of the road. His heart pounded as he looked around wildly. He hadn't heard the door open, hadn't felt the weight shift. She had just vanished. Shaking, he pulled over to the side of the road, trying to catch his breath. He told himself maybe he had imagined her, maybe exhaustion was playing tricks on him. But then he noticed something. The seat was wet. The fabric was soaked through, like someone had just stepped out of a lake. And there, on the floorboard, were muddy footprints, leading from the seat to the passenger door. Except the door was still locked. Ethan stared at it, his mind racing. His breath fogged in the air though the heater was running. That was when he saw movement in his side mirror. The girl. She was standing on the shoulder again, right where he had first picked her up, her dress dripping, her eyes fixed on him. Only this time, her mouth was stretched wide in a smile that didn't look human. Ethan didn't wait. He slammed his foot on the gas, his truck roaring down the empty road, headlights shaking against the fog. He didn't look back, not once. When he finally reached home, his hands were trembling so hard he could barely get his keys into the lock. That night, he swore he'd never drive the Willow Creek Road again. But sometimes, late at night, when he parks his truck, he swears he still hears the soft sound of water dripping inside the cab. Story 2: The Man in the Rearview. Derek had been driving for nearly 5 hours through the flat, empty backroads of Nevada. It was one of those stretches where gas stations were rare, houses were non-existent, and the desert stretched endlessly under a black sky scattered with cold stars. The clock on the dashboard glowed 2:47 a.m. The road ahead shimmered in the faint heat rising off the asphalt, though the air outside was frigid. He was exhausted, eyelids heavy, but the strange emptiness of the road kept him awake. That, and the sense that he wasn't as alone as he should have been. It started small. A shape flickering at the edge of his headlights, gone before he could focus. A faint shadow crossing the desert brush where nothing should have moved. Derek told himself it was just fatigue. Still, he couldn't shake the unease settling in his chest. The first time he noticed the figure, it was in his rearview mirror. A man. Just standing in the middle of the road he had already driven. Derek blinked hard, rubbed his eyes, and glanced back again. The road was empty. "Jesus, I'm losing it," he muttered, fingers tightening on the wheel. He turned the radio up, trying to drown the silence with static and faint music. But a few minutes later, when his eyes flicked to the mirror again, there he was. The same man. Closer. This time Derek saw more details. Tall, shoulders stiff, face pale like chalk under the moonlight. He wore a black coat, and though the truck was moving at 60 miles per hour, the man's expression was clear. A thin smile, stretched unnaturally wide, like he was enjoying something Derek couldn't understand. Derek's heart slammed. He whipped his head around to check the road behind him. Empty. Completely empty. No headlights, no figure, nothing. He kept driving, now wide awake, his stomach twisting into knots. Every few seconds his eyes darted back to the mirror. For long stretches it was normal. Just darkness. Just his own reflection. And then, without warning, the man was there again. But now, he wasn't on the road. He was sitting in the back seat. Derek nearly swerved off the highway. He slammed the brakes, his truck skidding as gravel sprayed across the shoulder. Panting, he whipped around to look at the seat behind him. Empty. He grabbed the flashlight from his glove compartment, shining it wildly around the truck. Nothing. His hands shook so hard he could barely hold it steady. For a long time, Derek just sat there on the side of the road, the engine idling, his heart hammering in his throat. He told himself it was exhaustion. A hallucination. He needed to get a motel, sleep, and stop letting his imagination eat him alive. So he started driving again. But now, he refused to look in the mirror. He fixed his eyes on the road, jaw clenched, every nerve in his body screaming to glance up. He didn't. Not for 10 minutes. Not for 20. And then, he couldn't help it. He looked. The man was there. This time his face was closer, so close Derek could see the black pits where his eyes should have been. His head was tilted, like a predator curious about its prey. His mouth stretched into that same impossible grin, teeth too sharp, too many. Derek's scream tore through the cab. He slammed the gas pedal down and the truck shot forward, the engine howling. He didn't look away from the mirror this time. Couldn't. Because the man's face began to change. It was his own. Derek stared into the reflection, and what looked back was his own face, but hollow, skin pale, eyes nothing but black sockets, mouth split wide in that terrible smile. His reflection moved when he didn't, grinning wider, leaning closer. And then the headlights flickered. For a split second, the desert road ahead was gone, swallowed in darkness. When they came back, Derek wasn't sure what was real anymore. The road, the truck, his own hands clutching the wheel. The last thing he remembered before the crash was the sound of laughter filling the cab, echoing from the back seat, from the mirror, from inside his own head. When police found the wreck hours later, Derek's truck was a twisted ruin against a dry creek bed. The cause of the accident was never explained, but the responding officers swore she saw something in the rearview mirror when she leaned into the cab. A face. Smiling. Story 3. The gas station at mile 46. It was past midnight when Emily pulled her car into the only gas station she'd seen for nearly an hour. Her tank was nearly empty, the desert highway stretching endlessly behind her, no headlights in sight. The gas station sat alone under buzzing fluorescent lights, its paint peeling, sign flickering with only half the letters lit. As Stadi N. She killed the engine and stepped out, hugging her jacket tight. The air was dry and heavy, the kind that made every sound echo. She expected to hear crickets, wind, something. Instead, there was only silence. Emily slid her card into the pump. It beeped, but nothing happened. She frowned, tried again. Same thing. Finally, she sighed and walked toward the small convenience store attached to the station. The bell above the door rang as she entered. Inside smelled of dust and something faintly rotten. Shelves of old candy and canned food lined the aisles, but everything looked stale, outdated. Behind the counter sat a man. Or at least, he looked like a man. He was tall, too thin, with skin stretched tight over his bones. His eyes never blinked as they fixed on her, dark and glassy. His lips peeled back into a grin that didn't reach those eyes. "Pump not working?" His voice rasped, like dry leaves scratching against asphalt. Emily froze. Something in her gut screamed at her to turn around, get back in her car, and drive until her tank gave out. But her keys were in her hand, and her nerves made her laugh weakly. "Yeah," she said. "Pump's broken. Can I pay inside?" The man's grin widened. "Of course. Just leave your keys here while you go." Emily's hand tightened around them. "Why would I do that?" He didn't answer. He just stared. She felt his eyes following the rise and fall of her chest, like he was counting her breaths. The silence stretched too long. Emily backed toward the door, muttering, "Forget it, I'll try another station." That was when the lights went out. The store was plunged into darkness. For a split second, only the buzzing of the dead bulbs remained, echoing like insects trapped in her ears. Then the generator outside kicked on, and the lights flickered back, just once. In that flash, she saw the man wasn't behind the counter anymore. He was standing inches from her. Emily screamed and shoved past him, slamming out the door and sprinting for her car. Her fingers fumbled with the handle, but she got in, jamming the keys into the ignition. The engine roared to life. She looked up. The man was already at her windshield. He pressed his face against the glass, skin stretched thin, mouth grinning wider than should have been possible, teeth too long and too many. His hand scraped down the hood with a screech that set her teeth on edge. Emily slammed the gas pedal. The car lurched forward, throwing him aside, or at least she thought it did. She didn't look back. She sped down the highway, heart hammering so hard it hurt. For a few blessed minutes, the road was empty again. Desert on both sides. Just the steady hum of her tires. She forced herself to breathe, to believe she was safe. Then she glanced at her rearview mirror. The gas station was gone. In its place, just a mile behind her, was another pair of headlights. Small. Old. Too close. The car tailing her didn't pass. Didn't fall back. Just kept its distance, like a predator stalking prey. Her stomach sank. She pressed harder on the gas. The headlights mimicked her speed exactly. And when she finally dared to look closer, when her eyes adjusted, she realized the car behind her wasn't a car at all. It was the gas station. The entire building, glowing under its buzzing lights, rolling silently down the highway as if the earth itself carried it closer, closer, closer. Emily's scream tore through the night, swallowed by the endless desert. By morning, her car was found abandoned on the side of the road at mile 46. Tank empty. Keys still in the ignition. The gas station? It was never there. Story 4. Room 7 at the Hollow Pines Motel. Derek had been driving for 14 hours straight when he finally saw the glowing red neon sign, Hollow Pines Motel. The letters buzzed against the night sky, some half burned out, spelling, How PIS. Exhausted, he pulled into the empty lot. The office door creaked when he pushed it open, and the smell hit him immediately, musty, like damp carpet and old smoke. Behind the counter sat a woman with pale skin and stringy black hair. Her smile looked practiced, stretched too wide. "Traveling far?" she asked. "Yeah," Derek said. "Just need a place to sleep. One night." She slid a key across the counter. The tag was old brass, the number barely scratched in, 7. Derek frowned. "No card? No receipt?" Her eyes locked onto his. "Room 7 is perfect for you." He wanted to question it, but his eyelids were heavy, his bones aching. He just nodded and carried his bag to the room. The door to room 7 stuck when he pushed it open, the wood splintering around the lock. Inside, the wallpaper peeled in long strips, the carpet stained dark in places he didn't want to imagine. A single lamp buzzed weakly in the corner. Derek dropped his bag, collapsed on the bed, and was asleep almost instantly. But he woke hours later to the sound of whispering. At first, he thought it was coming from outside. Then he realized it was inside the room. The whispers seeped from the walls. Dozens of voices, layered, hissing over each other in words he couldn't quite make out. He pressed his ear against the peeling wallpaper, and his stomach dropped. The voices weren't behind the wall, they were inside it. One voice rose above the rest, clear and sharp. "Don't leave." "Not yet." Derek stumbled back, heart racing. He grabbed his bag, threw open the door, and stepped into the hallway. But the hallway wasn't the same. Instead of a straight row of doors leading outside, it twisted into darkness, walls narrowing until they seemed to breathe. The carpet squished wet under his shoes. He turned back toward room 7. Only the door wasn't there anymore. Just wallpaper. The whispers grew louder. Now he could make out the words. Stay with us forever." Derek broke into a run. The hallway stretched endlessly, bending in impossible directions. Doors appeared on either side, numbered randomly, 14, 22, 3, 19. Each one rattled violently, as if something inside was clawing to get out. Finally, a door marked exit glowed red at the end. Relief surged through him. He shoved it open and stepped back into room 7. The bed was neatly made. His bag sat where he'd left it. Only, the air was heavier, thicker, almost wet. The wallpaper bulged as if something underneath was pressing against it. The lamp flickered. In its glow, Derek saw the shape of a hand pressing outward from inside the wall. Fingers stretched long and thin, nails sharp. Then another hand. Then a face, pushing through the wallpaper as if it were skin. The face looked exactly like his own. It smiled. The whispers all stopped at once, replaced by a single voice that filled the room. His voice, but deeper, wrong. "One of us." The lamp shattered. Darkness swallowed him. The next morning, the motel clerk sat behind the counter, her smile unchanged. A new brass key lay in front of her, scratched with the number 7. When another weary traveler entered and asked for a room, she slid it across the counter, her pale fingers brushing the key. "Room 7 is perfect for you," she said. And somewhere inside the walls of the motel, Derek's muffled screaming began to join the chorus of whispers. Story 5. The Last Ride at Black Hollow Carnival. The Black Hollow Carnival appeared overnight. Nobody saw trucks, nobody saw workers. One day the field outside town was empty, and the next morning, the rusted Ferris wheel loomed against the gray sky. No ads, no flyers. Just glowing lights flickering after dusk, music drifting through the trees, and the smell of burned sugar in the air. Ethan's friends dared him to go. "Just one ride," they teased. He was stubborn enough not to back down. So at midnight he walked through the rusted gates. Inside, everything looked frozen in time. Rides groaned as they turned slowly, though no one was there to run them. A carousel spun, its horses chipped and eyeless. A clown-shaped ticket booth leaned sideways, its painted smile cracked. And yet, the lights were on. A distorted voice echoed from hidden speakers. "Welcome to Black Hollow. The show never ends." Ethan's skin prickled. He told himself it was just abandoned props, some weird prank. But then he saw movement. On the midway, a row of carnival games stood ready: ring toss, balloon darts, milk bottles. Behind the counters stood figures. Not people. Their faces were papier-mâché masks, features stretched into grotesque smiles. Their eyes were nothing but hollow sockets. Still, their heads turned as one when he walked past. One raised a gloved hand and whispered, in a voice that sounded like dry leaves, play the game." Ethan bolted deeper into the carnival. He stopped at the Ferris wheel. Its cars swayed in the wind, the metal screeching. A sign dangled from one chain. "One last ride." Something compelled him forward. The gate creaked open on its own. A car swung low, waiting. He hesitated, but the ground beneath his feet shifted, tilting, forcing him toward the seat. He stumbled inside. The bar locked with a snap. The wheel groaned, lurching upward. At first, it seemed normal. But when Ethan looked down, the carnival wasn't below him anymore. It was a town. His town. Only wrong. Houses sagged, streets cracked, cars burned and overturned. Figures moved between the ruins, people, but twisted, their bodies bent at impossible angles, faces warped into screaming masks. One of them looked up. It was his best friend, Jake. Except Jake's jaw hung loose, eyes melted, black fluid dripping down his cheeks. "Ethan," the thing croaked. "Join us." The Ferris wheel kept rising. Each rotation showed more. His school in flames, his mother's face in a window, skin peeled back, mouth opening in a scream he couldn't hear. The ride wasn't taking him higher. It was taking him deeper. At the very top, the world shifted again. The carnival stretched endless in all directions, rides towering into the night sky, music warped and endless. The seat next to him was no longer empty. A clown sat there, suit tattered, face painted in dried blood. Its smile was carved too wide, teeth sharp and yellow. "Every town has its carnival," it rasped. "Every soul gets one last ride." Ethan tried to scream, but the clown shoved something cold and wet into his mouth, cotton candy, pink and sticky, but it squirmed like living flesh. The bar unlocked. His seat tipped forward. He fell. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was standing on the midway again. The carnival was alive with people now. Kids laughing, couples holding hands, families eating treats. But something was wrong. Every single face was his. Thousands of Ethans, all smiling, all turning to look at him in perfect unison. He stumbled back, breath ragged. The distorted speaker voice returned, louder this time. Welcome to Black Hollow. The show never ends. The next morning, Ethan's friends went looking for him. They found only the empty field. No rides. No lights. No carnival. Just a Ferris wheel car sitting half buried in the mud. Inside, smeared in pink sugar, was Ethan's phone. The last photo it had taken was a blurry selfie, Ethan's terrified face, and behind him, rows of identical smiles stretching into the dark.